Hello, welcome. You are watching Raw News. Welcome back. This is Insight in Term 2. I'm your host, Enoch Makungu. Insight is the premier news show for Raw 12:51 a.m., giving Warwick students a chance to talk about the issues that are most important to them, both on and off campus. We have a jam-packed show today because it's been a while since we were last on, and a lot has happened. Most importantly, Warwick has announced their mitigation package for the third national lockdown, and many students have been left absolutely disappointed by what they see as a sort of a paltry offering, focused mostly on resits rather than what they hoped for safety net. We're also going to discuss the newly announced slates for the spring election and how that's going to impact spring elections and how people are feeling about it. And of course, we couldn't have Insight without discussing Donald Trump and his attempted coup in America. But first, before we get into any of that, I have to bring in my wonderful, wonderful panel, starting with a representative here from Engineering Department, here to discuss the safety net. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm Andrew, second year General Engineering, and they, them pronouns.
Yeah. So Andrew, you're currently on the Engineering SSLC, is that how much? I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, SSLC.
Yeah. So what are you guys currently doing to working towards safety net? Just give us a small hint now before we discuss them more later.
So I have a meeting with some people from the year and the head of teaching in like a few hours, and we're basically going to discuss like kind of a contingency plan. And because people want face-to-face teaching, people don't want to have completely online lectures, people don't want to be, basically having a Zoom university degree. But obviously this comes with risks. This comes with stuff you have to put in place to make sure it can work properly. So we'll be having a meeting later with some engineering students from first and second year to basically get an idea of, if we put this plan into place, is this going to work? And we will be discussing a safety net, but I think we're just waiting on the central university at this point because it's out of the engineering department's hands.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, hopefully we'll get into a bit more into that in just a second. Next to add to the stream, someone who's not been on a Raw news show before, but has done some reporting for us, and is currently muted.
Hi, my name is Atharva. I'm a second year computer systems engineering student, pronouns he, him.
Yeah. So Atharva, like I said, this is your first time on Insight, I believe. You've not been on the show before.
It is my first time on Insight. It's not quite my first time on a Raw show, but yeah.
Yeah, because you host a radio show of your own. Are you still doing this?
I do. I am, yeah, I am. The show's called Yes, No, Maybe, where we discuss current affairs and entertainment news. Tune in Tuesdays, 2 to 3 p.m.
Oh, well, we'll plug like that, who wouldn't? Next up, we have someone who I actually just discovered, although Bird told me, but Little Bird, I mean LinkedIn, has become a PulseSoc Fresh representative. Imogen, welcome to the stream.
Hello, I'm Imogen. I first year politics student, and my pronouns are she, her.
Yeah, well, firstly, congratulations on becoming a PulseSoc Fresh rep. What's it like?
It's really fun so far. Like, it's just, like, obviously it's like only just started, so I've been fresh rep for a few weeks now, but it's been really fun to just being able to like get to know the exec and start working on some of the projects that they're doing, and they've got some really interesting stuff lined up, so I'm really looking forward to get involved in that. And yeah, it seems like really exciting just to be a part of the events coming out and kind of having an input in things. And so yeah, really looking forward to everything that we've got coming out in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Next up, a man who'll be familiar to many of you who've watched the show before.
Hi, I'm Ninu. I'm a second year econ student, and I go by he/him pronouns.
Yeah, Ninu, how many times have you been on Insight this year? Just backing me up when
this year. This is probably my 4th or 5th appearance, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
I feel like it's definitely more, which means you've been on over 50% of the shows we've had so far. So, thanks. And we're going from someone who's been on the show the most to someone who's also brand new. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave. I'm a second year PPE student, and my pronouns are he/him.
Yeah, so Dave, you're brand new to the show. What motivated you to come on Raw News for the first time?
Oh, well, I saw your list of the topics, and I was like, this is something that I can talk about. So yeah.
I see. So we just finally had the right combination of stories for you to finally get interested. Is that it?
exactly. You know, I was like, you know what, I might as well come here and just talk about it. So yeah.
Oh, I guess, after 2 terms of doing the job, I finally got good at it. Well, at least that's one plus side of lockdown. All right, well, let's just jump right into it then, because we have a lot to discuss today. Starting with the lack of safety net. Obviously, Warwick last week announced a new list of measures dealing with third national lockdown. I mean, dear God, a third national lockdown. This is just the most miserable year. You guys don't have to be muted, by the way. You can just have your microphones unmuted. So Warwick announced that they're going to be offering us a combination of September resets, mark distribution that will be marked against pre-COVID modules levels, the rights to the fair assessment from the summer period to the December period, and also the normal mitigation patches they offer as well. Pal, I want to go around and ask you first up. Do you think this is? How are you? Are you happy with this? Are you happy with this package? Are you happy with this package? Andrew, we'll start with you.
So I have mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, they're going to grade based on previous modules marks anyway. Like if someone does really well, if the whole cohort does really badly in a module, they're going to look at the previous marks and then scale it to sort of fit that same distribution. So this isn't really something that's a safety net package. This is just what's going to happen anyway. I do think there should be something rigorous in place, which is, I don't know, if you got a first in first year, you can't go to say a 2-2 or something in second year, that you can't go more than 1 degree classification down, because yeah, the content's going to get harder as you go up, first to second to third. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to get harder to the point where the overwhelming majority of people would be dipping into like the lower classifications, because teaching online is difficult, learning online is difficult, and I definitely appreciate that a lot of the lecturers are putting so much time into putting their stuff online, but at the end of the day, you can't, it's just not the same. And I'm sure other people have heard in first year this mantra of go to lectures, lecture capture is no way to learn, go to your lectures, speak to your lecturers face to face. And if we don't have that, then we just need something in place that's more stringent than what's been offered now.
Yeah. Same question. Do you agree with what Andrew said? Do you think actually this is quite enough?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all know that the way that teaching has been conducted over the last now 2 terms has been not up to scratch in terms of how it was pre-COVID, and you can't expect it to be. There's bound to be some growing pains, right? But that also needs to apply to us, because we're also learning how to do stuff online as well as just learning the content. So I don't think that it's particularly fair that we have no safety net in place. Although I agree that like the details of it need to be sorted out in terms of what measures can be offered, because it's not as simple as yes, safety net, no safety net, right? So yeah.
Obviously I haven't, because I'm a first year, I don't know what the mitigation package was last year and how that's differed to this year. And even just considering the quality of teaching, I have no idea what a proper university educational experience is meant to be like. So I'm completely just only used to having like 2 contact hours a week of going like into a seminar in a room where you have to be 2 meters apart, wearing a mask, and barely any contact, and kind of conversations flowing between you and your peers and your seminar tutor. And then lectures, I have no idea what a regular lecturer is like. And so I do think that that's going to really affect a lot of first years from being able to properly get settled into the university life when it comes to taking exams and assess material. So obviously I'm not entirely sure how this mitigation package does differ from how it was last year and the benefits and drawbacks from that, but I can, like, speaking from a first year perspective, in just saying that it's going to be difficult for them to like have the same attainment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what leads into question then. Do you feel as a first year that you've been properly supported in your pursuit of your degree this year, or in this sort of diminished circumstances?
I mean, just in general, like, I don't know if 2 contact hours a week like can cut it really, and even those 2 contact hours not having the right amount of like interaction and the regular just like talking to a tutor after a seminar or something, or even just like having a lecture in person, being able to like properly engage with the lecturer. Like, I don't think that experience is what it's meant to be like. And obviously, like, you know, that there's a reason for that. But I do think that, you know, we can't be expected to produce the same amount of like the highest quality of work when we are basically just doing it all from our bedroom, especially being, you know, going straight from doing A-levels to university work. There's a massive jump, and not being given the right amount of support in terms of the kind of the quality of work you're meant to produce. That's obviously going to be affected for us. And I don't, even like not knowing any different, but I just don't know if that's going to be able to cut it going into doing like assessed materials.
Yeah. Nini, I want to come to you then. How do you feel? Because obviously you and I both first years last year. We obviously took a massive hit at the end of the year. How do you feel about the package this year?
See, the thing is, I simply don't think it's enough, because it is less comprehensive than it was last year. It protects you less than it was last year. And the question simply becomes, are students better off now than they were 12 months ago? And I don't think I agree with that. I think after almost an entire year of being in either some sort of lockdown or restricted ability to go out being restricted, and regardless of that, the most in-person teaching we've had at uni is in-person seminars around twice a week for most of us, where again you had to stay separated with your mask on, and it just wasn't the same as it was before. So we're not better off. So why is our mitigation policy not reflecting in that? I understand the academic staff have put in a lot of work, right? I understand we need to cut them some slack, but they all need to cut us some slack, right? It goes both ways. I don't think they're doing enough with this mitigation policy, and I think as students we have every right to be outraged by that, and every right to demand more.
Yeah. And Dave, it seems like there's a pretty clear consensus on the panel about what people think about this issue. But what do you think?
The thing is, as a second year student, I don't know what more could be. Like, I know it was Andrew, he mentioned that it should be something up between your first grades and your second year grades. I agree with that. For like my modules, we had like literally about 10% of our assignments, 10% of our grade like done as something ridiculous like that, as opposed to what should have been under normal circumstances. And that's such a small like data set to extrapolate. These people did really well in these few assignments. First, basically guaranteed to get 2-1 in second. I think that doing something like that would just be preposterous, and it would actually undermine like, the value of the degree that we were coming out. And I think that you've got to have this balancing act between the degree that you come out with, that it should be respected, that you shouldn't be giving tons of people first and 2-1s, which they probably wouldn't have got the normal circumstances. And yeah, as in for secondary students, I'm not completely sure as in what more could. Don't know, and I'm excited to hear what other panelists have to say about what more they think should be offered.
Yeah, well then I guess we're going to go straight to someone who is negotiating for more right now. Andrew, you're in second year, you represent second years in your SSLC. What more can second years be offered reasonably from the university?
Yeah, okay, I completely agree with Dave that you don't want to devalue the degree, because if you just blindly blanket everyone with, okay, you get a first, you get a first, you get a 2-1, and no one fails because it's unfair, that's not going to help anyone in the long run, because the grades will be inflated, the classifications will be inflated, and it's going to be a huge pain to sort of sort through. I still think there should be some recognition that people have been putting in a lot of effort, if not more than first year. I know in my particular situation, I've put in way more effort than I have in first year, and I don't feel like I could have attained, or I haven't even attained as much as I could have, because it is difficult. You're just sinking time into online lectures when you should be going to, the Oculus, sitting there with your friends, taking notes together. If you have questions, you ask them there and you get the answers to them straight away. I think, so coming back to your question on what should the second years be offered, 3 first attempts in September if you can get in-person teaching in term 3, which I think that is sort of in the pipeline that they want to offer people. And sort of more like a holistic view of, if someone's done really well in first year, that could have been just because they worked hard in first year, but then in second year they kind of dropped off. But it's a pandemic. People are stuck inside. Your quality of life is severely affected. And to just recognize the work that people have put in, that if someone had done this level of work in a regular kind of university environment and they would have gotten a first, then even if the grades don't match this in their second or third year, maybe they should still be given some leeway within, I don't know, 10% of that grade. If that makes sense.
10% grade. That's the whole classification.
Okay. That's okay. Sorry, what were you saying there, David?
I was just saying 10% of grade seems like really steep, as in like, so that's inflating classification. So what you end up with in that sort of scenario is the same percentage of first as we have 2-1s at the moment, which for most degree programs it's about, I think, 80% or something. That's not the factor, but it's really high. And if we did that, then having a first would literally mean nothing, and we could end with something similar to what we've had at the A levels last year, where you've had a lot of inflation, like the A stars and this.
I guess I suppose that is the question I would put to the panel then. Is there a risk with a safety net? Well, I mean, suppose it's not a risk because they've not done it. But would there be a risk with a safety net of the score grade inflation? Or is that something not to be concerned about in sort of pursuing equitable education for people in the pandemic? Nino, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a balance that needs to be met, right? Like, obviously, no one's saying, "Oh yeah, give everybody a first," because then, yeah, that would be horrible. But as Andrew said, there needs to be some recognition of the idea that if someone put in as much work as they're putting in this year into a regular university scenario, they probably would have gotten a much higher grade. And it's as simple as that. I don't think it's unfair to be asking for a better mitigation policy when people's quality of lives are much lower than they've had to endure in their life, at least for most students. I think it's sort of unfair for all of us to be looking at the situation at hand, recognizing that the situation at hand is bad, and trying to keep up our regular workload and quality of assessment, but at the same time not allowing us the chance, the mitigation package that should come with that. Right? Like in real life, when inflation goes up, wages go up. In the same way, you're trying to get us to keep the same level of assessment quality, keep the same level of hard work, while the world around us is ending, right? Like, I do think there definitely needs to be some sort of balance that needs to be met. Again, I'm not saying, yeah, give everyone a first. I understand the risks of that, but there needs to be some comprehensive safety net in place. And it has to be better than what they've put in so far.
Yeah, I'll ask the last remaining second year to jump in here. How do you feel about your work this year? Do you think your work is, obviously everyone's probably felt the impact of the pandemic, but do you think your work has notably suffered because of the pandemic?
100%. I mean, it's not just the quality of work I'm producing, it's the quality of work, it's the kind of work that I'm being expected to produce. So we've seen like assignments that are meant to be done in groups and are being put to people individually. Stuff that you would be expected to do in person has now been moved completely online. And obviously with that, there are difficulties associated with it, right? I mean, it's infinitely more difficult to arrange a group meeting when everybody is all online in like 5 different time zones, as opposed to when everyone's on campus within like a 2-kilometer radius of each other. It's not really reasonable to expect us to be able to do the same kinds of work and to the same degree of quality as we would be expected to if there wasn't a global pandemic and if everyone wasn't stuck inside all the time. And that's not even to mention the kind of mental health aspects of it, where if everyone's stuck inside all the time, how does that affect them on a personal level? Like me personally, I'm okay being at home, but that's not the same situation that everyone else is in. People, like we've seen people now going to campus so that they can get away from their home life. And that's an entire dimension of it that doesn't really seem to be addressed as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, I want to come to you for the final point on this. Obviously, you're currently working to get a new safety net put in place. What can students do to help contribute to that kind of fight, and what can students do to try and argue for their case?
So I think most importantly, don't just spam email your heads of teaching or whoever your student sort of authority is, because it just makes everyone's life more difficult. what I've taken to doing is I keep a daily record of all the work I've done every single day. And if I have to come to the point where, I don't know, I apply for mitigating circumstances because I think the grade I received was unfair, I can then evidence saying I've done this work on this day, I have the papers, I have like the thick stack of revision materials that I've been going through. So people should just try, it's not ideal, and this is kind of a hand-wavy solution to it, but if you have any issues and you've been affected because of COVID, just submit mitigating circumstances and get the evidence you can. And I know this is like a really terrible thing to say, I don't think the petitions are going to make that much of a difference because it's the Russell Group, it's meant to be prestigious, everyone's meant to be sort of on another level of university research or whatever. So if they decide no safety net, it's going to be quite difficult to circumvent that. And I think people should just try and take it individually, like submit mitigating, talk to your department leaders if you can and say, this is how I feel about it. But I think this whole idea of swarming with like a department with emails just doesn't ever get anywhere.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you for coming on today. You've been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on from the safety net now to our next topic. Slates for SABs get SABs slated. It's a bit of alliteration I was particularly proud of, which just tells you off the bat how bad the banners in the show are on the regular. Obviously, the SU, again last week, announced a new plan for slates in the spring elections. Basically, it's going to mean you as a group could run as an entire sort of string of candidates, and you could campaign together and sort of coalesce funds and all that kind of thing. Now, slates, for the SU said the slates have been going on unofficially, and the only way to regulate them was to bring them back into the fold and make them legal again. Panel, I want to go around to get your reaction to this information. I want to get your opinion on this information, starting from, sort of, oh, I don't care, to this is the best thing ever, I can't wait for this to come into place. And then we'll start from you and go the other way around.
Okay. I just gotta say, I don't think this is a great idea at all. And I think, more importantly, the timing of that announcement was kind of shocking. For me, when I read the Slate post, all I could think was, this is just a BTEC party system. And the party system itself is inherently flawed. And I think it just turns these elections from what they are right now into more of a popularity contest. Right? What group of friends is more popular than the other ones? And this way also, if you look at how potential slates could develop, it has the potential for a few members to be doing all the work and a few members to be free riding off of them and not doing anything. It has a potential to sort of negatively impact Warwick student democracy, and I don't think it's a good idea at all. I also think the timing of the announcement was honestly a bit sad. If anybody saw the Facebook post, I think I saw it 5 hours after it came up, and every single reaction to the post was an angry react, and every single comment was a comment slating the student union. And I think that's simply because we're at a time where every single student right now that I've seen has been campaigning, or at least wanting privately, a safety net, a more comprehensive mitigation policy. And in response to all of this, what the SU has done is, instead of responding with, okay, we'll try to get you one, or it's impossible, or any of that, they've responded with the slate thing. And it just seemed a bit pathetic, the timing. The SU has become more and more of a joke. Every time I see them have an update, they're becoming more and more about trying to pad their resumes and trying to win a popularity contest and actually caring about the students of this university. Of course, I understand it's a very hard time right now, so we should cut them some slack, but I gotta say they really dropped the ball with this one.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think?
I think party system is literally a BTEC party system, and I think that is something that we really should be avoiding, because let's not lie, when most SAB officers they run with exactly the same policies pretty much. And to say that, oh, we can see what people stand for within slates, I really don't think you can, because everyone is campaigning for the same thing. And I think I've forgotten, but yeah, as in people run for the same thing, and like, you want to choose, the SAB is an individual, they shouldn't be representing a group or anything else. And I think that is something that is really important to remember. And second thing, which really annoys me about this slate system, it's that the sabbatical officers have to work together at the end of the day. And if they come from like different political groups or just different groups, and they've run against different people, and then when they've got to work together at the end of the day, there's going to be some splintering within the sabbatical team. We've seen this a few months ago with in-person teaching, for example. We had half of the SU sabbatical officers pretty much going out saying this is horrific, what you're doing, you're killing people, and the other people like, you're putting students first. I think if we've already got these rifts in the sub team, just putting slates in and making it even more political, it's going to make it even worse in terms of sabbatical cohesion. And at the end of the day, the SU is there to represent us, and the ability to represent us, I think the slates is only going to have a negative impact on it, if anything.
Yeah. Imogen, you're a first year. You've not experienced any of this messy, sad business before. What do you think about this?
I mean, I could totally understand where everyone else is coming from, and that, you know, it can kind of create party politics, and then if that becomes like completely ingrained in the election process of the SU, and, you know, having two vying sides, that could be quite detrimental to the democracy of the elections of the SU. But I do think one thing we have to consider is that, you know, turnout for these elections is quite low from what I've heard. And a way of increasing that could be by creating slates, by saying, oh, this person has kind of similar views to this. If you vote for this person, you can vote for this person, and it will create a much simpler process. And that like might be an easier way to increase turnout. But I think that, you know, the long-term effects this can have on the actual democracy of the SU is a lot stronger. And I think that there can be other ways that can help increase turnout rather than going that direction.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've got sort of two arguments for, one argument against. Where do you come down?
Honestly, I don't know too much about the SU election process as a whole, because in my first year, I didn't really pay much attention to what was going on.
So you were wise then.
And I think, I mean, having slates might sort of increase election turnout, but also, yeah, it might make factionalism even worse, and it might make things even more of a popularity contest, more so than it already is, from what I gathered in last year's election. Instead of having signs for specific people now, we might just have signs for slates. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that.
Well, I guess you saw the article, I can't pronounce the words escape me again. Yeah, thank you. You're that word he just said, voters they're trying to recapture in this election. Do you think it's going to motivate you to go back and vote for the SU stuff again?
Honestly, I don't know. It really depends more about the policies they put forward to me personally. I'm less of a personality kind of person. If you've got a good idea, I will vote for it.
Well, you've also touched on it briefly, but this year has been particularly contentious for SABs, both in terms of the public backlash to their actions, both from, I'm trying to remember all the controversy we had this year, the COVID pop incident, all student votes, the online teaching campaign, and now, of course, this. So with sort of the new toxicity bubbling up in student politics, do we think this is a helpful move? Dave, I'll come to you.
No, I honestly don't. I think at the end of the day, it's about the cohesion of the sabbatical officers, and this is going to make that way worse. I think the point about a popularity contest, if anything, I think it might make it less of a popularity contest, just in the fact that individuals, when you run as an individual, a lot of time it's about their popularity. But I think that's just dismissing that point against. But the main point against, it's about cohesion, and at the end of the day, we don't want party politics in the SU. We just want sabbatical officers that will represent us, because wherever someone stands on a political spectrum, I think that they would be putting students first at the end of the day. And I think that putting slates in, you can have weaker candidates which get carried, but also it's just going to make cohesion next year even harder for the sabbatical officers. We've not touched on it yet, but I think the other thing that the SG's brought in is that student groups can endorse particular candidates. That is something which I think is more productive in terms of informing people as to what someone's specific policies are in relation to their groups. So, for example, I'm on the executive team of Warwick Jewish Society. And if we have some sabbatical officers which we think could actually go against the interests and of the Jewish students, and then I think that it's quite nice to know that we can then come out as a society and say, look, this is what this person's standing for, and we urge you not to vote for them simply because they're not standing for the values which we think should be represented. That is something which can help to promote people's education of what a particular candidate stands for. Slates do not really do that. It's just going to result in party politics. So I've put a few points in there, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sort of touched upon cohesion there, and I think that's one of the bigger issues we have with the SU. There's been not a lot of cohesion, it seems, in the upper ranks this year. Particularly, once again, go back to that COVID pop announcement where the DDO sort of named and shamed some SABS officers who seemed to support a pop that occurred, a pop social that occurred right before we were back into the second national lockdown. Imogen, I'm going to come back to you again because you're a fresher. You've not experienced this before. What is your opinion of the SU, and do you think there's anything they can do at this point to either improve it or make it worse?
Yeah, all that I've heard from the SU is just absolute atrocities, and I don't like. I'm like, is this how it's always been? Has it always been like scandal after scandal and disagreements and what are they actually doing? To help represent us.
They're mostly messed up quieter. That's how it works.
Yeah, I even remember the week before I came to uni, the petition to try and stop the SU from endorsing all online teaching was circulating, and everyone was like, "Why are they doing this? This doesn't make any sense at all." And so that's my initial reaction to the SU. And obviously, there's been so much stuff coming out and so many scandals, and from what I've heard about different stuff to do with the actual runnings of the SU. But in terms of the idea of societies being able to endorse particular candidates, I do think that will go away again to help increase turnout and increase people that are actually aware of the elections and people being educated on who stands for what. And I do think that will go about. But going back to the slates, I don't really know their main reasoning behind it and the whole intention. I don't know what the overarching goal is by putting that in. Obviously, yeah, there could be some benefits and obviously massive drawbacks, but I haven't seen as in this is our massive goal for increasing accountability, or we want to be able to increase cohesion in the next year's SU. So I'm not entirely sure what their exact main goal is here, and for that for me that's a main issue that I'm kind of struggling to grapple with, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that just sort of leaves one question before we abandon the phase of SU democracy for American democracy. Are you guys going to vote in this term spring elections? Are you guys going to vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Depends what I'm voting for.
If the SU turns into an actual union that functions as a union, I might consider it, but otherwise, no.
Would you vote for a candidate you promised to turn it into a union? That sounds like us preparing to launch a manifesto. I don't answer that question. That's terrible. So obviously, personally, of course, I love you all, SAB officers. Please come on my show, do our interviews, please. That's all I really want. And if you missed it last week, Johnny Jenkins interviewed for Raw Top 51 AM, Luke Metham and Megan Clark about both safety net and also wider problems with SU democracy. So please, you can find them on our Facebook page and our YouTube. They're great interviews. I highly recommend them. But time to bring in our final guest. Adam, welcome to the show, because we are going to be discussing Law and Order Presidential Crimes Unit. So you may, in case you missed it, if you did, I don't know how, on the 6th of January, while the Senate was ratifying Joe Biden's victory, the Congress was stormed by a mob of angry Trump supporters, which somehow was the perfect ending to the whole Trump debacle, even though I couldn't have imagined it happening at any other time in history. Now Donald Trump has been impeached in the House, is heading towards potentially impeachment in the Senate with Mitch McConnell backing it. I just want to ask, panel, how do you think it's right to impeach Donald Trump for what's happened now? Adam, since you're the newest member, I'll start with you.
Hello, Enoch. Thank you for having me. So, ultimately, that is for the House to decide. But given what we've seen, and given the fact that it wasn't just an angry mob, it was a domestic terrorist attack that seemed to have the backing of the President of the United States, I see no possible alternative but to say, well, actually, if there isn't a high crime and misdemeanor here, then I don't know what is. So yes, it was right for them to bring forward the impeachment. Issue obviously is it's not going to remove him from office in time for when he leaves office. So there is a question about actually the effectiveness of the trial going forward, which in the Senate, which is then a separate issue and is also subject to some constitutional wrangling that the Senate are currently trying to work out at this moment in time.
Oh god, constitutional wrangling. I can't wait to have a president when there doesn't need any blooming constitutional wrangling to get anything done. All right, I'll open it up to the panel then. Do you think it's time for Donald Trump to be impeached? David, all right.
Can I go? Well, firstly, he has already been impeached. Like the second time, it's more. Do I think he should be found guilty? I think on the article of impeachment that's put forward, which is basically saying that, which is in references specifically the mob, and they incited that he did not condemn it. I think his refusal to condemn it immediately showed that he's not someone who is really worthy of holding office. So I do think that he should be found guilty and barred from holding office. Personally, I think we should have put a second article of impeachment forward, which in relation to him ringing the Secretary of State for Georgia and basically telling him to find some votes. And I think that is someone going beyond the actual powers that the president should have for their own personal gain. And I would vote to impeach them on that article, but I do not think they're going to bring that forward just for the sake of brevity. And in relation to the Constitution, I do think there's precedent to impeaching someone after they've left office. Not a president, I think it was the Secretary of Defense. There's also someone else can enlighten me on that, but yeah.
Yeah, I do not know the exact details, but I think there definitely is some sort of president or legal argument for it. You know, it is very annoying that Donald Trump, the second this show went up there, Donald Trump immediately went on a crime spree. Like, we spent weeks with nothing to discuss, and the second I stopped doing it, he's like, I'm going to call up Georgia, I'm going to demand votes, I'm going to storm the Senate. It's just ridiculous. Well, but obviously, of course, Donald Trump was not alone in his time in the Senate, because not one man could do that when he did. And the mob that he unleashed is now very much being investigated by the FBI. And the Washington itself has been declared a green zone, which is filled with National Guard. Do we think there's a chance of another attack happening close to Joe Biden's inauguration, which is on Wednesday? Thank God. Anyone, Nina, I'll come to you. Do you think there's a chance of another attack happening?
Yeah. I think it's very possible and I'm going to tell you why. Because the first attack was not as big a shock as many people said it was. It wasn't. Because what did you expect? Would you expect a country whose entire purpose politically is to maintain the status quo? All they've ever done, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, all they've ever done is maintain the same things. Make sure the poor are poor, the rich are rich, and the middle class are the middle class. So what happens when you have a system like that, and then on top of that, you allow a sociopath who feels zero and cannot tell the difference between lies and truth. You allow him to run. You allow him to lie to millions and millions of people, tell them that, he can change things, that he's going to drain the swamp, that he's going to make change, that they're all going to be living large, that all of their problems are the fault of minorities, of the fault of women, are the fault of all of these things. And that he is the one savior, the one man who can rise above this bureaucracy. And then, obviously, because he's a liar who's never, I don't think it's just that he's lying. I think he physically doesn't know what the truth is. Probably because as a child, nobody taught him consequences. And he cannot feel guilt. So obviously what's going to happen then is he's going to do none of these things. And he's going to try and make the rich richer. And when the working class part of his fan base realized that, he's going to continue to blame the minorities. So when he loses the election, which he obviously lost, he never polled above 50%. He didn't even win the popular vote for the election he did win. When he finally loses an election, obviously, because nobody ever told him no as a child, he's gonna say that he didn't lose it. And then you have a bunch of angry people who are tired of the system, not knowing who to blame, And you have this man who, again, is immune, who believes he's immune to consequence, sitting there and saying, yeah, it's their fault. Do what you want to do. Take the fight to your own hands. And you have his idiot lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, saying we should have a trial by combat because they're man children that could not accept the fact that they lost an election. And obviously, this is what's going to happen. And I think if they don't up the security at this on the 21st, there's a very likely chance it'll happen again. And I'm not surprised that he was impeached. I'm very happy he was impeached. But I don't think any politician should be taking credit for that, because how do you let him run in the first place?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there. I'm hearing reports Donald Trump has just died after hearing that rant about. All right, wow. I almost felt bad for him for a second there, dear Lord. Okay. Anyone want to rise and defend Donald Trump from that onslaught? Right. Well, I had like another question ready to go. I'm just like amazed.
Well, what do you think of another question, Enoch? I can build on the issue around the internal security threats. So, the Department of Defense and the US Secret Service are investigating the possibility that there could be internal people who are actually guarding the Capitol, who might actually be looking at possibly trying to cause some form of trouble at the inauguration. Whether or not that includes the possibility of assassinating the president, given the current rhetoric and the really high tensions we have got in the American political system, that is obviously within the realms of possibility. So no wonder it's going to remain a green zone on Capitol Hill, and the US Secret Service are going to be working round the clock to ensure the protection. And we should obviously remember the US Secret Service were not there at the Capitol previously. They're now here. We've now got authorization of more National Guard troops. President-elect Biden, it is reported, has actually handpicked his Secret Service team, which will not include members who were on Donald Trump's detail, for the simple reason is there is a question, and it's an allegation at this stage. We don't necessarily know how much truth there is. There is an allegation that some of these Secret Service officers might actually hold a loyalty to President Trump and not to President-elect Biden. But thankfully for Mr. Biden, having been a vice president, he already has good relationships with several of the officers and several of the people involved, which has helped him reach such a decision. So yes, security is going to be incredibly tight. We can expect protests, not just in Washington, D.C. We will start to look at seeing protests across the country, particularly as Donald Trump is planning some sort of exit event to coincide with the inauguration. So he won't actually be attending the inauguration. He will be flying down to Florida and he will be hosting some sort of event, but we don't know the details.
Yes, apparently people are willing to pay $100 to watch Donald Trump board the plane, which I will never understand. But, leaving Donald Trump behind in the past, as we will do soon, thank God, once again, Joe Biden will be president of the United States of America from Wednesday. What should his first policy move be? We've heard some announcements. He plans to roll back approval for the Keystone Pipeline. Obviously, he wants to rejoin the Paris Peace Accord, the Paris Agreement. What should Joe Biden's main move be once he gets back in charge? Free to anyone to answer. So just literally.
Can I go?
Yeah, of course.
I've heard someone mention pardoning Donald Trump. I think that would be a really interesting move. Just one, it might promote some form of unity. But two, I think that any form of pardon would result in an acceptance of guilt on Donald Trump's part. And if Trump denies the pardon, then he's obviously shooting himself in the foot, and he's not allowing the country to move on. People are like, you're not letting the country move on. And if he accepts it, he's accepting that he is guilty or something. And I think that either one might just be an interesting combination. This is not personally what I think he should do first. I don't know what I think he should do first, but I was throwing that out there as just an interesting thing to discuss.
Yeah. Well, I personally, I'll only accept Donald Trump getting pardoned if Linda gets to his rant to him first. We also have a comment in. Jacob says, I'll happily watch a trial by combat of Trump versus Mayweather. So, I don't know. Maybe that's something for all the cable TV managers out there to try and get all
Donald Trump is a pro wrestler, so who knows how that would
He
go.
is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, so it would.
I'd like to briefly touch
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
idea of Biden pardoning Trump, because I can see it happening as well as some like half-hearted calls for unity. And it's also completely in line with what Democrats have been doing up until this point, is basically enabling Trump through not opposing him. So, it's a move that is completely in line with what they would do. I also think it's a terrible idea giving any form of quarter to what is essentially a proto-fascist mob. I mean, there were literal neo-Nazis there, so, yeah, in terms of Joe Biden policy, I think day one, there needs to be more aggressive climate change measures. Joining the Paris Agreement, fine, but the Paris Agreement wasn't sufficient even when it was made. So rejoining it now in 2021, it's not going to cut it. Keystone Pipeline, sure, but there needs to be an active push towards a Green New Deal and making sure that the US can build the kind of green infrastructure they need while ensuring that people working in the fossil fuel industry are protected, their jobs are secured, and also making a more aggressive push towards influencing foreign policy towards decarbonizing the environment.
Yeah.
Because we don't have much time left. Arguably, we don't have any time left. So we need to get it done because Elon Musk is not going to save us. Mars is not an option, guys. I don't think it ever was.
No.
Yeah. Daddy Musk is not going to beam us up to Mars. I know that there are people who think this is a realistic outcome. It's not.
All right. Okay.
I'm torn.
Climate change seems to be like a major theme of the sort of Joe Biden's current policy. You're on the head of the Green Party and here at Warwick. Talk us through what you think needs to do on climate.
I mean, obviously, well done for doing the bare minimum of rejoining the Paris Climate Accords. I do think that a lot more needs to be done, but I just don't see it happening. Like, I really don't. Like, potentially if Bernie Sanders was elected, we'd see something that is kind of nearing what we want, but I just can't see Biden taking the drastic steps that needs to be taken to even have a singular reduction in emissions. I do think that the oil industry and just these massive like carbon emitting corporations, they're not gonna be gone tomorrow. They have so much power within the government, and that doesn't change president to president. They as an interest have so much power over the president and over Congress and over the executive as a whole, and I don't think that's going to go away with the inauguration of Biden. I do think that he will take steps that are kind of more symbolic, like going back into the Paris Climate Accord, but I don't think that he's going to be taking the steps that need to be taken just because of the backlash from even within the Democrats. I mean, you have like AOC and like Bernie Sanders who do want to back this Green New Deal, but that they are a minority in the Democratic Party. And so even though, the Democrats do have a majority in the House and the Senate, I don't think that's going to be enough to be able to push through the radical reform that needs to happen, especially in America.
Yeah. So it seems a very mixed view of Joe Biden's first few days in office. Well, here are the major things to watch out for the next few days. Tomorrow, Joe Biden is hosting a memorial for all the people who've died of COVID in America, where people will be lighting candles, and I think there'll be a prayer service as well. There's also, before the inauguration, there's the indauguration, where Joe Biden's dog will be officially named as the first dog in the United States of America. That's something that's happening now. That's something that's going to happen. And I'm telling you that like it's news, but really, I'm fine. And then, of course, on Wednesday, Joe Biden will be officially named President of the United States of America, and Donald Trump will be dragged out of the White House kicking and screaming, and the world will be a better place. At least my world will be a better place. I'll be a happier person. At least that
I'm not so sure about that one.
No, yeah, he's gonna leave.
No, because it's not. Trumpism was born before Trump, and Trumpism will die much after Trump.
Trumpism. We can get to that later. But for the purposes of this week, for the purposes of this 1 week, I'm going to take this win. That's all I want.
Fair enough. We take what we can get.
Yeah, it's been a hard 4 years. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Thank you all for coming on. Been absolutely wonderful. Thank you everyone who's tuned in. You've all been absolutely brilliant. Thank you to Jacob for your trumpet, for playing trumpets and Mayweather in my head, and I'll treasure that forever. Insight will return next week, but until then,